Hello and welcome to Gin Me Live for the month of April. Although we are, of course, tasting March's gin, which this month is from East London Liquor Company, and it is the fantastic Lauder gin. Maybe you've managed to refrain from drinking yours thus far, as you've had it in hand for 2 or 3 weeks. I can't say I have refrained from drinking any of mine, but I do have a little bit left, which is lucky, because tonight's going to be great. We've got Gin Me co-founder, my business partner, Tom, who's going to be making some drinks. Bring him in a second. And we've got Alex Wolpert, who is the founder of East London Liquor Company, coming in to tell us all about the distillery, about the gin, how to drink it, how it's made, and lots of cool stuff like that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Tom first. Hey, Tom.
Good evening, mate. How's it going?
Good to have you, as always. Yeah. And then we're going to bring in Alex as well. Hey, Alex.
How you doing? Good to see you, Tom. Hey, Tristan.
Yeah, hi. How you doing?
Good
to see you. And thanks for joining us tonight, because I know you're on holiday and you've taken time out of your holiday in Ireland to spend half an hour with me and Tom.
Pleasure.
Good stuff. Well, if any of our subscribers are familiar with Whiskey Me, our sister company, then they may be aware that we featured East London Liquor Company, I don't know, about a year ago, was it? Or maybe not quite a year ago.
Yeah, about that, somewhere around there, a year, 18 months ago, wasn't it?
And featured your whiskey, which was great and very well received. And we did a live tasting of that too, where we talked a lot about the distillery and everything. We're going to go over some of that same ground again tonight, and hear again from Alex about the founding of the distillery, and then move on more specifically about the gin. So, Alex, do you want to start by maybe talking a little bit about how East London Liquor Company started?
Yeah, of course. So I founded the business almost 9 years ago now as a whiskey and gin distillery. My background was bartending, so it was very much sort of liquid first. How do we make great drinks? Thinking about the kind of the final moment in the glass, whether it's behind a bar or in someone's home. How do we make liquid that makes sense, that is easy to use, easy to make cocktails with, and easy to identify and resonate with be it a bartender or a consumer? So that was very much the thinking behind what we're doing. Great booze for everyone. And really the kind of uphill struggle has been to bust this myth that price equals quality, and that the inverse is also true, that if something is not expensive, it therefore cannot be good, which we all know is nonsense. So I guess for us, it's this idea of championing indie local booze, which is accessible, transparent, and most importantly, delicious.
Yeah. And it's just, I've been shouting about your distillery for years now as well, because it is really challenging that idea that because you make a small distillery with lovely copper pot stills and everything's handcrafted, you can charge £40 for a bottle of gin. And it is crazy. And, you know, we feature gins on here that are, you know, pushing towards that price range. But it's remarkable how what you've done, what you're doing, and really the competitive price that you're charging, and the fact that your gin and your whiskey, rather than rum, rather than sitting, you know, on a back bar and occasionally being picked up but otherwise gathering dust, or even just featuring in a cocktail, you're priced at a point where good bars can legitimately use your products as a house pour for gin and tonics and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much the idea of, you know, appealing to people's sense of supporting local and obviously not compromising on quality, but still getting something where they can come and see it being made. They can talk to us. They can get involved. You know, whether it's a consumer tour on a Friday evening or, you know, a bunch of bartenders during the week, to come in and see where we make it and kind of get stuck in, if you like, is really important.
Yeah, so tell us a bit about the distillery itself, because it's in East London. It's a cool location. It's an amazing building as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an old paint and glue factory. We were very lucky to find it over 10 years ago now, and it's great. We've got three stills. We've got a brew house there, so a grain to glass on all the whiskies, and then with the gins, we source a British wheat-based spirit that we then redistill for our gins. And that's you know, we started off with 2 stills, and year 3 we got a 3rd still and brought the brewing in-house rather than brewing down the road at Crate. So yeah, it's been a kind of slow and steady kind of expanding and growing, as we've been able to. And the whiskey really has been such a lovely thing, really, to be able to scale our whiskey over. I know we're here to talk about gin, but the whiskey piece, I guess, has been really lovely, because I think the gin was very much, it wasn't that we were making gin to fund whiskey. That's not the story. That's not the rationale. It's very much been this idea of being a distillery in London. There's a kind of like a core connection with bars and bartenders with gin, and it felt crazy not to make gin, but it also felt crazy not to kind of explore what gin we could make and what flavors we could explore and kind of highlight with different gins. So, the gins that we have on our website today, we have our kind of our core East London gin, which is the kind of Swiss Army knife of gins. It does everything very well. You can't really go wrong with it. It's our best selling gin, and it's always been our most accessible and easiest to understand and approach, whether it's for a gin and tonic or a martini. And when we started, we had a batch 1 and batch 2, and there may be some people on tonight or who view this later who will remember the batch 1 and batch 2 days, when our kind of look and feel was a little different. But as the kind of C word got bandied about a lot more, and we were labeled craft more and more, we were really keen to kind of step outside that bubble. We never really called ourselves craft. I still don't know what the word means. No one has yet been able to give me a cogent metric for what is craft and what isn't. For me, it very much represents a kind of a crutch to justify a high price tag without much else going on. So for us, it was kind of, let's dodge that and let's re-articulate a better articulation of what we've always been about. So juice is the same, people are the same, but the look and feel of the brand for the last almost 4 years now is a little different. So batch 2, which we're trying tonight, is now louder. And this is a little quick segue into the gin already, and cut me off if I'm going too quick.
No, that's fine.
But batch 1 and batch 2 were really the kind of exploration of what gin could be for a bartender. If you're making a martini, what do you need a gin to be? You need it to have sort of spicy backbone, a bit of aromatic, dry tannins to it, and some citrus to it, which at a higher ABV really works when you're stirring down a martini. And then what do you need for a Negroni on the other side of the flavor spectrum? What do you need for a Negroni? You need savory, saline, herbaceous notes to really combat and stack up against the Campari and the vermouth. So that's where louder came from. So brighter and louder are different expressions of our East London gin.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We used to
making a Negroni tonight, by the way, Tom.
I'm
we're
not
quite there yet.
I'm not making a Negroni, actually. I was thinking about it, and I'll be, if I'm going to be totally honest with you, I was struggling to source some Campari, is the absolute truth. I'm actually in Nottingham at the moment, at my parents' house, and I went out to source some Campari and I couldn't get any. So it sort of put me on the back foot a little bit. But
another reason not to like Nottingham.
it gave me a really nice challenge to, obviously, the whole point of the cocktail element to what we do is to try and create things that are super accessible, right? And that can be made by almost anyone at home. So I kind of thought, okay, well, fine, nice challenge accepted. What can be purchased in the limited supply that I have within the place I've got? So I'm actually making a very classic Collins, which kind of fits quite nicely with the way the weather's turning at the moment as well, and it's getting warmer. But I was going to say, Alex, actually, many years ago, probably 9 years ago or so, Tristan and I used to make bottled cocktails. We had our own very small bottle cocktail business that was based out of Mile End, and I used to walk my dog regularly on Victoria Park and always drive past or walk past the distillery quite often. And I noticed that there's obviously, back then this is, and I'm sure it's the case now, there was quite a strong presence in a lot of the local pubs and boozers around the area in terms of the brand. And obviously it makes a lot of sense to start that sort of nucleus and spread from there in terms of the local area, Victoria Park and around the area, Mile End, and there's some fantastic pubs. Was that always sort of part of the initial plan, was to kind of conquer the East End of London and spread from there?
Conquer the East End like the Crays.
Yeah.
Not with the same methods. It really was. I mean, I was, we didn't have a sales team for the first couple of years, so it was me with a bottle of gin in my pocket, kind of wandering around. And it was very much this thing of, if we can't kind of have some kind of sort of love and sort of following locally, then how can we expect to sort of expand that out? So it was very much of, how can we how can we work with the local hotels and bars and restaurants, but also, you know, if you go into the fishmongers or if you go into the barbers, you know, and you're going to get offered a drink, how can we work with local businesses outside the kind of normal kind of confines of what you'd expect a booze brand to be focusing on.
Sorry to jump in as well. Just a couple of things. You guys also have, if I'm right, a couple of sort of extensions of the distillery in terms of almost brand homes, right? One in Borough Market as well. Is that right? And
yeah, we have a shop in Borough Market. We have a shop in the distillery. So Borough Market's a nice south outpost, which means we can get bartenders in for tastings and trainings there, but also means we can kind of, you know, take part in that amazingly vibrant food scene in Borough Market, which food and drink scene, obviously, which is great.
Good stuff. Great.
Yeah. So just going back to Lauder, which is the gin, of course, we have. I don't know if because on our cards, on our tasting cards, we put like a recommended cocktail serve, and I didn't have the liquid to hand when I was writing the cards this time, but I was reading the botanicals and I tasted it before, and I thought, oh my god, this is just Negroni juice, like, because it's got all that Mediterranean herbal stuff going on, quite savoury notes, like you say. And then when I wrote the card, I was like, right, East London Negroni, what do we call it? And I mean, you must have thought of this, and then probably thought, no, that's just stupid. But it's a Cockney Grony, right?
You know what, Tristan? I've never heard of that. It's genius.
Well, look, you can have that one for free, mate. And I probably never expected to use it in any marketing materials whatsoever. But I thought that was quite funny, a Cockney Grony.
Is that what it says on the tasting card?
Yeah.
It is indeed, yeah.
That's funny.
Genius.
Yeah, see that?
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
So anyway, actually, before we get into Lauder, so there's 4 in total, right? You've done one with Kew Gardens, right? And then there's Lauder and the East London gin. And what's the other one again?
Writer,
yeah. So tell us a little bit about that one.
So Briters are kind of our martini style, are kind of the first iteration out of East London gin. Darjeeling tea, pink grapefruit, Chinese cinnamon, kind of the spicier, drier, aromatic flavor profiles that you want to really come through when you're stirring a martini down. With our whiskies and with our gins, we use alcohol as a kind of lever to accentuate flavor. I mean, we all know if we have a Merlot at 12% or 14%, it's going to taste different. I think that the same is true with spirit. And, you know, those of us who spend a long time deliberating over booze will know this. But I think for kind of wider community who are here drinking with us tonight, different flavors get accentuated with different alcoholic strengths. So at 45%, that Darjeeling tea, that cassia, the cubeb, that spicy backbone to the brighter gin really comes through. And Lauder, that we're going to try in a minute together, at 47%, that savory saline herbaceousness is accentuated much more the closer you get to 50%. So, you know, ABV is not arbitrary. It's not our way of dodging HMRC as much as possible. It's really there to kind of serve as a function to ensure that the final moment of consumption is as we intend it to be.
Okay, so with Lauder then, let's just run through some of not all the botanicals necessarily, but like the ones that really kind of are exciting to you and the ones that are really standing out in this particular product.
Yeah, of course. So sage, thyme, bay leaf, lavender, lemon. Those are probably the predominant flavors. We use lemon because it's a sharper citrus profile that cuts through the oily components of the oily flavors of the other botanicals. And we use the kind of the sage, thyme, bay leaf mix to really kind of give those differing levels of herbaceousness. So the flavor kind of persists. The kind of unsung hero of gin really is coriander seed. So we're using that very citrusy, non-citrus flavor, which is obviously citrus, but it's not a citrus, to kind of amplify and extend your perception of citrus. So your olfactory glands are picking up more citrus than there really is from the lemon. So on the nose, you get that kind of bright, fresh note, but you also get that kind of English garden herb, kind of that kind of herbaceousness. that kind of evolves on the palate. And the lavender really gives a really lovely finish where, you know, whether you're making a dirty martini, or whether you're making a red snapper or a Negroni, that lavender just comes through on the finish. Lavender's often misused and overused, so it's there in a tiny quantity just to lift the finish a bit more.
Yeah, you got to be careful with lavender, haven't you? It's one of those ones that can take over easily.
Yeah.
Cardamon's the other one that I find like gin producers, you know, it's either not present at all or it dominates completely.
Yeah. We have cardamom in Iceland and gin, and it's that green cardamom just sweetens the spice of the juniper. I'm not saying that we use Macedonian juniper for all our gins. They're big, oily berries. The pinene content is high, which means even when you dilute a gin and tonic 2-to-1, even 3-to-1, if you're in a pub or bar, not at home, you're still going to get that lovely kind of oily juniper backbone. If you're drinking at home tonight, go 1-to-1. If that's too punchy, go 2-to-1, but don't put any more tonic in than that.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, for me, it's I don't know what you think, Tom, but for me, I mean, there's juniper there certainly, and it's coriander at the start, and then it goes through this sort of herbal like hum in the middle where you get that bay and thyme, and then there is that little lick of florality towards the end there from the lavender. I think it's really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the thing that I find amazing about it as well is how rich and how deep it is on the palate as well, and it's got a sort of really pleasant contrast in the respect that it's obviously very aromatic, and like you said, quite rightly, heavy sort of citrus. But it's not light at all on the palate in a good way, in that it's quite robust and rich and heavy and spicy, which is all the things that you want when it comes to mixing, right? And making drinks. And you don't want it to get lost. You want it to shine through, and you want it to be, play the lead in those drinks. So it's got really nice sort of, but likewise, like you said earlier, in a martini where it plays the part of 90% of the drink, perhaps, or 80% of the drink. It's so well balanced that it can play that role as well. So I think it's brilliant. Personally, I love it. I think it's really good. And obviously, I'm presuming that the ABV is going to help that in some way, right? That, having that at 47% is going to draw out and pull and hold those aromatics as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, many people who try it don't say, "Oh my god, this is almost 50%," but you certainly get flavour in a different way. So the alcoholic content is not overbearing, but it serves as a sort of, it does its job in terms of highlighting the right savoury notes.
Yeah. Sometimes the alcohols, it sort of has an effect of gripping the palate, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And rather than heat, it's like structure. And I think this does it very well. And when the spirit's doing it well, because you don't immediately think, well, that's hot, that burns. You just think, oh, wow, there's a tactile quality to it, and there's an aromatic quality and all those things. And I think you got it with this for sure. Yeah.
Just a question for you, Alex, and just in terms of obviously building up the distillery and the brand and the business and that sort of thing. Obviously, from what I've read, and obviously you've lived through it, it seemed like it was an all-in kind of scenario, really. I mean, how did you find the sort of challenge of setting something up like that from scratch and really sort of pulling through? And here we are, how many years later? Over a decade later, and still. I don't mean this in a bad way, but still in business, still pushing, still growing, and obviously the category's done the same. What were the sort of main challenges that you found over the years that you've kind of overcome, really?
Well, I mean, no one could plan for the pandemic. I think that was probably the biggest shock to the system. The majority, over 90% of our accounts were on trade. So when they were shut down, we had a big old shock to the system. And I think it's been really testament to how sort of brilliantly loyal our kind of customers have been, that we've come through that, and we're still growing and working with new accounts and new customers, and that's still evolving. I think no one prepares you for the kind of the level of the sleepless nights, even without a pandemic, in terms of managing and the kind of the financial element, which is certainly not my forte. So I've been very lucky to have people who have supported that part of the business. I think the liquid is obviously it's a lot of love and hard work in getting the liquid right, but that's almost once that's locked and done, then hard work starts of actually going out and selling it, you know, and it's super competitive out there, you know. I think post pandemic, bars are even more shrewd about the deals they go for, and we have to work even harder to kind of advocate what we stand for.
Yeah. How many markets are you in? You're in about 12 or 13 markets globally, is that right, or more?
Yeah, about that. Yeah. I think it's probably just a little bit over that, but yeah, we work with work in LA, New York, the Nordics, Europe, Australia, and yeah, I mean it's been amazing to see actually that the local East London kind of brand ethos resonates globally. You know, you can walk into a restaurant bar in New York or in LA or, you know, Berlin, or, you know, and our products there, and people don't just stock it because they're sort of pushed it by their local distributor. They stock it because they've met someone from East London, and there's a relationship there, and there's a, you know, which is really lovely to see. I mean, the last 4 weeks I've been out and about with our new distributors regionally in sort of Nottingham, Leeds, Manchester, Bath, Cardiff, Bristol, and it's pretty humbling actually to see the degree of kind of support for a London brand, where they see that the London piece stands for something other than just its geography, which has kind of been amazing, really. Not maybe what I'd expected, but really kind of supportive up for it. If you'd called me an hour ago, I could have given you a list of accounts in Nottingham, which would have lent you a bottle of
Yeah.
There's some cracking bars in Nottingham. So
yeah, it's unlikely I'll get a chance to go out. As you can probably tell, I grew up in Nottingham, and I'm back here for Easter for a little bit. The kids are half term, so I'm sat in my mother's and father's conservatory right now. But I probably won't get a chance to go out, unfortunately. Although after this, I'm going to meet my mates at the local pub. That's about as close as I'll get to go now.
Nice.
But yeah,
that sounds very much like going out to me.
Well, it's about 500 yards away, and that'll be the only place that I'm going. So whether you want to call that out, I don't know, but it has been known to be a night out, but probably not tonight. I don't think. We'll see. But great.
But, so Alex, we sort of touched there a little bit on the gin market itself and how competitive it is out there. You know, we're 4 or 5 months into Gin Me now, and we've all three of us have seen how gin has evolved over the last decade and a half, let's say, or 2 decades, even if you want to go back that far, and how it's changed. What's your current assessment on the way the market is, with all its sort of warts and everything? We've got a lot of flavored gins out there now. The category is kind of evolving, changing for better or for worse. What's your prognosis?
Well, I mean, I think we've been quite consistent with our gin offering. We've not done pink or fruit or slow or flavored gins. And I think, we got some flack for that in the pink gin craze, because we weren't sort of jumping on that bandwagon. We didn't believe it would last and would add long-term value to what we've been offering. And many people said, you missed out on masses of sales, Alex. What are you doing? But actually, I think we're kind of coming full circle, and people want gin that tastes like gin, that doesn't taste like watermelon and raspberry. And I think that's lovely to see. And I think it is this kind of almost coming full circle to say we're making London dry style gins, and they have a place in your cupboard at home or behind a bar. And I guess we've never got into that scenario where the gins we were making were cannibalizing the previous SKU had released. Q was the Q gin, the collaboration with Kew Gardens was the first gin we launched since we started. So we had sort of 5 or 6 years without any MPD, if you like, of gin. So I think we've kind of been sort of slow and consistent with that approach, which I think is slowly paying off. Yeah, I mean, there people talk about gin fatigue. I think it's out there. I think particularly in the on-trade. And I think, I think things will come back to a kind of purer kind of version of what gin could be and can be. And I mean, you can see there's some really expensive top-end gins that are really, flying from, other parts of the world where people are really tapping into that sort of super premium market. But for us, it's very much about delivering kind of consistent, accessible, excellent liquid.
Yeah, because
sorry, I was just going to say, the classics don't die, do they? This is the thing. If you make a high quality, consistent classic product, you're always going to have a market, aren't you? And you book trends, and that's why in a lot of industries, there are a core selection of things that just last the test of time, don't they? Because people do go full circle and go back to them.
Well, there are. But as we see with spirit categories, you do get downturns, and what happens in the downturns is a select few brands get to survive it, and that was the state of play we were in 20 or 30 years ago, where we only really had Booths, Tanqueray, Beefeater, Gordon's, and then eventually Bombay Sapphire, because everything else had died a death. And I mean, for me, I was worried for a while recently that the gin category was going to cannibalize itself through poor quality products, and everyone was just going to get turned off because they're like, well, I don't want a rhubarb and apple liqueur that's claiming to be a gin. I don't want gin at all as a result of that. And well, it's great to hear what you're saying, Alex, and what we're seeing with Gin Me as well, that there's a desire there for good quality classic gins. And good quality gins from made elsewhere in the world with their own unique take on it that are still fundamentally gins at the end of the day rather than something else.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt it's getting harder, but I mean, I think that's true across every part of the business. Glass has gone up 57% in the last 12 months for us, let alone cardboard, paper, shipping. So I mean, the world is a harder place to buy and sell stuff in. And so, we have to scrutinize every part of our supply chain, what we're doing, why we're doing it. We introduced 10-litre jerry cans with Project Refill for retailers, as well as for bars, using HDPE plastic. Plastic often gets vilified for all the wrong reasons, and to be able to articulate the kind of the massive reduction in carbon to produce the plastic, let alone the reduction in carbon to recycle HDPE plastic compared to the same amount of glass is a great thing. And we've had a huge amount of bars take the jerrys on where the liquid is not in question, but the packaging and how they can reduce their recycling bill, their how much glass they're schlepping upstairs to recycle, and very much being a bit more efficient from a margin perspective. So that's really taken off leaps and bounds, and we're slowly now working with retailers to do the same thing. So you walk into an indie retailer and you bring any bottle, any spirit bottle, and you say, I want some gin or vodka or rum in it, and they fill it up, weigh it on the scales, put a new duty stamp on it, and stick a yellow sticker over whatever glass bottle it is. And if it's a blue bottle with a gin that began with B on it and it's got East London gin in it now with a big yellow sticker, then fantastic, and there's enough crap in the world, right? So let's reduce. Let's not make a new refill container. That seems incredibly backward in the current state of affairs. So any spirit bottle, clean it, bring it in, and we'll put the good stuff in it. That again has generated a huge amount of goodwill with our local customers, particularly. We unfortunately don't have the deep pockets to market that out as we would perhaps like to, but to our local community in Borough and in Bow, that's really started to slowly gain a bit of traction.
That's cool. That's interesting. So if I come in with an empty bottle, what sort of discount do I get on the normal bottle price for filling with that?
I think you get almost a £3 discount. I know our prices have gone up recently, but you get a hefty discount. So it's worth it.
That's good.
Yeah.
Nice. And it's already very well priced in the first place. So that's really, really good.
Yeah.
Cool. Tom. Go on,
yes.
Then.
All right, let's start it. Right. Well, let me just give this glass a bit of a drain here. So as I explained earlier, I did see the Negroni recipe, and I have to be very straight with you. Make sure I get this right.
Hot Negroni.
Negroni, that's it. I don't want to get that one wrong. So I was going to make that style of drink, if I'm honest. And yeah, funnily enough, not only could I not find any Campari, I also couldn't find any sweet vermouth, which is bizarre because I just find it completely unbelievable that you used to find at least Martini Rosso or something in every shop you could possibly go in, and now not. But anyway, So I'm going to make a classic Collins, basically, which is about as accessible as it goes, and is kind of a drink that has evolved, I guess, from a punch. Going back to the sort of 17th, 18th century, popularised in the 19th century, and is said, although disputed, to have originated in London in Limmer's Hotel on Conduit Street, but basically revolves around some very, very basic ingredients that you can actually buy anywhere in any supermarket. Although right now, that is questionable with the way things are going, so you'll have to check. But basically, a punch would normally consist of a few different ingredients, but primarily citrus would be the basis. So with this drink, we're going to start with a simple highball glass. I've added ice into there. It's been sat in there to chill the glass a little bit, and I've just drained the water out. And I'm going to add our sour element in there, which is just some freshly squeezed lemon juice, around about 25 millilitres of that into there, like so.
Love the old school lemon juice, Tom. That's your mum's.
Yeah, well, as I said, I'm in my mum and dad's conservatory. I'm using all their classic equipment. I've got a very simple 1-to-1 sugar syrup in here, which is effectively hot water, boiling water, and granulated sugar, equal parts, just dissolved. In the classic recipes, back in the 19th century, they would literally call for a spoon of sugar. Although I think it's a bit more efficient to add in a syrup if you can make it. So I'm going to go with half a measure of sugar syrup to the lemon juice, and around 50 millilitres of the Lauder gin in there, like so. And this is a built drink, as you can see. I'm just building it straight over the ice. No fuss, no shakers needed or anything like that. And I'm going to top this with soda water, very simply. So I've debranded this one. So we'll leave that to the imagination. And give it a stir. And it's as simple as that. Lemon juice, a little bit of sugar, the Lauder gin, which, as I explained earlier, I think the sort of the aromatics, the nice spice and the heavy body on the palate works really well. It's going to cut through nicely. This drink was basically described, I believe, in the 1940s. I think it was by a guy called David Embury, who effectively called it a lemonade charged with booze, or words to that effect. And I guess the point about this is that this drink can be made with any alcohol at all. We're using gin in this case, which is often referred to as a Tom Collins. Originally, it was using Old Tom gin, which was a style of gin of a sweeter style from the 19th century. But it's evolved, and nowadays, obviously, most people drink London dry style gins, and this drink works equally as well with that. But you can add in there brandy, whiskey, rum, tequila, anything that is your preference will make equally as tasty drinks, so long as you've got the ratios right to start with of 2 parts citrus to 1 part sweet. I guess your large measure of booze and a splash of soda water. Nice and simple, refreshing, perfect as we move into what seems to be quite nice spring weather, I think, coming up over the next few weeks, depending on where you are. But this sort of drink is fantastic for summer, and a really nice simple twist on a gin and tonic. If you want to try something different at home, if you've got guests and friends around. So there's a Tom Collins with the East London Liquor Company Lauder gin.
Nice.
It's great.
It's absolutely delicious.
It's a good drink to sort of try out any gin on, really, as a sort of test its mixability, I suppose. It's one of the sort of standard classic formulas, isn't it? I mean, if you want to sort of you want to put a gin through its paces, then stick it in a martini, stick it in a Collins, stick it in a Negroni. Just about there, aren't you?
I think there's probably the beauty of gin, I think, is that it's always been at the forefront of cocktails, right, and mixology, which means that there's a whole raft of recipes out there, and a huge proportion of them normally consist of only 2 or 3 ingredients. And because of that, often the ingredients required, again, are normally readily available, which means that you only have to buy probably, 4 or 5 different ingredients, and might open up a world of 50 different cocktails that you can make for yourself. And, the resources and the recipes that are out there are just so vast. And I don't think there's any other spirit well, I know that there's no other spirit really that comes close in terms of mixability and the array of readily made cocktails at home. And this is just one example. You know, you top that up with ginger ale, for example, you've got a totally different drink, one that also tastes epic, but might be, you know, more to your taste if you want something with a little bit of spice and a bit of sweetness. You know, remove the soda altogether and just serve it on the rocks as a sour. You know, add in a different citrus, put some grapefruit in there, a squeeze of grapefruit or a sprig of mint. And again, the versatility of it's so broad that, yeah, it's unmatched really, really, gin. And it's also great, like Tristan said, you know, it's great to experiment with different styles of gin. And the array of different flavors within gin as a category allow you to do that. So, but this is just a you know, very classic drink and one of my favorites personally.
Great, cool. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Alex, your distillery is open for visitors, very open. There's the bar there, which is incredible. You do food as well. What's the opening times? When should people come?
So open Thursday to Sunday. We have a new food offering coming online in the next sort of 4 or 5 weeks, which is very exciting. Tours can be booked on the website. And yeah, I mean, if you don't want to book yourself on a tour just yet, just park yourself at the bar. There's a big glass window. You sit at the bar, you look through the glass window, you see the stills we're making the gin. It's a nice big metaphor for being accessible and transparent, and kind of invites you in. And if there's anyone here from the trade who wants to pop in, just make yourself known, and we'll show you around. So very much an open door policy at the distillery for anyone who comes in.
Yeah, great. It's definitely well worth a visit. All right, thanks guys for doing this.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Thomas. Cheers, Tristan.
Nice one. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. We shall see you next time.